Thank you so much again for coming, and we will begin. So I'm just going to share with you what we will be doing this morning and what your morning will look like. I've already done my welcome, but I am going to give you just a little bit of an idea of why we're here today. Then I'm going to do a short summary to remind all of us of the process that was started well over a year ago that brings us here today. Then I'll be turning things over to Andrea Trenholm and Aimée Foreman, who will give you an overview of the research results and the final report. And you have some of those on your table, and they will be walking you through those. We're then going to take then Caroline from Passamaquoddy Lodge is going to be reviewing the 6 action plans that as a group we all came up with. And the action plan posters are up around the room, and Caroline will be speaking to those and update you on the wonderful work that is being done to accomplish those action plans. So very exciting. Then we'll take a short break. We then are very fortunate to have Minister for Seniors, Kathy Bockus, who will be joining us with an exciting announcement. Then we have a very special guest speaker, Suzanne Dupuis-Blanchard, who will be speaking about nursing homes without walls. And this will be a fascinating talk. So we're very fortunate to have Suzanne with us. There'll be an opportunity for questions, then we'll feed you, and then we hope to have everything wrapped up by 2 o'clock. Sound like a plan?
I like the feed part.
Well, this table's going to change from just coffee and tea to food. So why are we here today? Well, first of all, it's our opportunity to update you on all the work that's been done. When we last met in this room, it was last February. It looked very different outside, was much cooler, and we did not as yet have a final report done. We didn't have the final results of the research done. So today is our opportunity to update you on all of that. We've got some beautiful reports that you're going to be able to take away with you today. So this is another reason for having you here today, is to give you those reports. And then finally, it's our opportunity to thank you for all the contributions that you made over the past year and a half. So we're thanking you with a meal, special speakers, and getting us all together again. So that's why we're here. Just a quick little summary, because it was a year and a half ago, to remind us that this is part of what's called a Healthy Seniors Pilot Project. And it is being funded by the provincial government and the federal government. There are 4 partner organizations: Passamaquoddy Lodge, St. Thomas University, Silvermark in Fredericton, and the Healthy Seniors Pilot Project. As a result of that, if you recall, all of us were in our first session at the community college last July, so a year ago July, and we visioned what we could possibly do. If anything were possible, what could the new community partner space at the lodge look like? That's where we started the consultation. Eventually, the consultation came around to looking at other aspects of the community as well. So we started focusing on the new lodge and the community partner space, but we soon looked at all other resources of the community and how those resources could also be part of an aging in place strategy. While all that consultation was going on, the aspect of consulting you was being researched. And that's where St. Thomas University comes in. And Andrea Trenholm is going to give you a summary of what that research looked like, the process, and the results. Oh yeah, so this is just a reminder. We started last July. We followed up in October. We then had a number of sessions in November. We had a meeting here in February, and now we're here in late September to give you the results. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Andrea Trenholm.
Thank you, Muriel. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm a little bit taller than Muriel. First, I just want to say it's really, really lovely to be back here in St. Andrews today. It was like exciting as Aimée and I, and you'll meet Aimée next from Silvermark, as we drove down. It was super foggy in Fredericton, and the sun kind of started coming out as we got closer to St. Andrews, and we see the beautiful Passamaquoddy Bay. So I'm really, my heart's warm to be here with you today. Basically, I just want to give kind of a brief summary of what we saw and to thank you for all of those of you that participated in the research and in the project for your time. So as Muriel mentioned, like we had 5 community engagement sessions starting in July. So that's kind of represented by the top pink timeline. We started in July with the first one. We had 1 in October, 2 in November, and a final one in February, and now we're back to sort of go over the final phase of the research. The thing is that in February, we hadn't yet even conducted the second round of the research yet. That all came after that February event. Because while it's like we had 2 arms of the project the whole time. While we were doing the events and gathering ideas, and that was being documented during the sessions themselves, and the Silvermark team would go back together and put all of those notes together of what were all the ideas that came forward for envisioning this community hub and how that could support aging in place in St. Andrews. Behind the scenes, we had a whole research arm going on, which most of you know, and many of you in this room were involved in that. We made a decision early on to engage peer researchers to be the ones to collect the qualitative data, so I'll just... And that, I think, was a really important decision for this project, because then rather than individuals receiving an email from me, who you don't know, I'm an outsider to St. Andrews, you were receiving, hopefully most of the time, an email or a phone call from someone that you know. And we also had Dr. Gary Irwin-Kenyon involved as a peer researcher support person here on the ground. Gary started the gerontology department at St. Thomas University, for those of you that don't know, and was really helpful. I think he actually supported me through the project almost more than the peer researchers themselves, who anyways, there's Jamie's in the room today, and I saw Sandy Olmson and Sue Rangeley and Barbara Roberts were all involved as peer researchers, and there's a few more that weren't able to make it today. So I really want to say thank you to all of you, because what came out of those interviews was the most important data. At the very first engagement session that we had, there was 75 attendees. And from that, in the end, we had 45 people volunteer to participate in the research, which is a pretty great number. That was then broken down into, sorry that that's maybe actually a little bit small. In peer researcher-led interviews, there was 36 individuals in the first round. It did drop to 22 in the second round, and I'll speak to the main reason why was that we only invited people to come to the second interview if they had attended 2 or more events, so that they showed that they were really engaged in the process, because we were looking at community engagement. So if they attended 2 or more events, they were invited, and that number was 27. So from 27, 22 people agreed to participate. So again, this is actually a really good number. There was also 5 stakeholder interviews that were done in the first round of research only. but they were involved as individuals that were interested in the project more on behalf of an organization that they were involved with or working for, rather than as an individual citizen in a way. Then we also had other methods. So there was observation notes taken all throughout, some by myself, some by peer researchers. We would debrief afterwards as a whole project team, as well as myself with peer researchers following every event. All of those notes were kind of collated together. There was document analysis, and most of you probably remember, they probably seemed a little bit annoying at the time, the attendee satisfaction surveys that we kept giving you after every event, except in November, we did one for the two because they were close together. It probably felt like a lot of, like, why do we have to do this every single time? But that data was also really illuminating for us. And not only did it help us in the end with writing up a summary, it allowed us to get some instant feedback and make some changes along the way, which I'll speak to in a minute. We also had quantitative surveys. And you've probably heard me say this before, and I know some of you in this room feel similarly. The quantitative surveys were my least favorite part of the project. It's especially on a one-person level, you feel like, well, sometimes the questions feel awkward. We don't have freedom to change how the questions are worded. We're using documented scales. It feels very rigid and structured. In the end, they were quite illuminating because we put all of the data together from everyone that participated. Now, you can see there's a drop-off again. 27 people did the survey the first time. And this was made available online as well as hard copies for people that just prefer pen and paper, which most of the time I still do as well. It did drop to only 12 people completed the second survey. But again, only people that attended 2 or more events were invited to do the second survey because we were looking for those that were most engaged. And this 12 people that actually completed it, 17 that were invited, the 12 people that completed it, 75% attended 4 or 5 events. So it was a very highly engaged group. And what these surveys looked at was civic engagement, attitudes and behaviors, and is there any change from the beginning to the end? Connectedness with social organizations in the community, and do you feel that those organizations would help you if you need help? It also looked at some measures of personal wellness and psychological wellness. I'm just going to grab my water real quick. All right. So after we had all of this, the qualitative data and the quantitative data, and we'd already done a first round of analysis on it, we had to figure out how do we write this up in our report. And we decided to use an input, process, and output model for community engagement. So that meant that we looked at sort of the stories and all of the data that came up that spoke to specifically what happened during the input phase. So was the context made clear? Was the purpose made clear to people? And many of you might remember that along the way, there was a lot of times people made comments of like, I'm not really sure where we're going with this, or what's the overall purpose? What's going to be the goal of the project? There were some questions and concerns around that, and we saw it repeatedly throughout. And by doing it, laying it this way, and because you spoke up and shared that information, we were able to sort of trace back and look at context in multiple layers and realize one thing I don't know that was ever shared with all of you is that this project was originally supposed to be 21 months long. But by the time we found out we had funding for it, we had only 15 months to do the project. So when you lose 6 months, there's sort of like a anxiousness to get going and start doing stuff and have the events. And we sort of went into this role of like, the project team went into the role of like, we got to plan our event. We got to get people there. We have to advertise it without having some of the foundational like planning really, really clear, like at least in a in a way that was communicated well to all of you. It was there behind the scenes, but so it was lacking that way a little bit. And because you shared that, we are able to say in a blueprint for community engagement, which the Silvermark team and Aimée will speak to this, to be able to lay out that planning time is so essential on the input side. Because actually, in the end, I had 15 recommendations in my executive summary for the research report, and 9 of them speak to the input side alone. 9 out of 15. Now, I will say for structural features, that really speaks to how the events were ran and facilitated, and the feedback was really positive, which really speaks to Muriel and how well she was able to bring people together, keep people engaged, organize our agendas, and there was a lot of really positive feedback for you, Muriel. So, well, thank you. Then there was the process part itself. So how did you feel it was coming to for the people that did the interviews? How did you feel that the event went when you were there? How were you making connections? And it was really beautiful to see even people that have lived in St. Andrews for a long time. And the average range of how long people had lived here was between 11 and 20 years. So we had some people that had lived here for much longer. But there was also quite a bit of newcomers that had lived here for less than 4 years. And even those that had lived here for a long time said, wow, I really got to connect with people that I've already known, but in a different way. And I got to feel that I'm not alone in my thinking, like my worries about what's to come in my future. Which spoke to like a sense of a shared future and a shared purpose. Those comments were really beautiful to go through. And also the depth of the discussions. Like you felt like you actually tackled some important issues. There was also, just the fact that you were asked, that Passamaquoddy Lodge decided to undergo a process like this and ask for opinions of what should be in there and not just do it themselves. So I think there was a lot of really positive feedback in there for Passamaquoddy Lodge. Carolyn and Yolande, the new administrators here, and Emma and Roseanne from the team. And we did see a shift at the beginning. I didn't mention this. In the context piece, there was a bit, like the research team wasn't aware, or most of the project team, of some of the past relationships between all of you and the community and Passamaquoddy Lodge. And the design of the new nursing home, those kind of things, that came out a lot at the beginning. And because you shared that, that's able to go into a report saying, kind of know some of the relational groundwork that's there before you start asking people to decide on something else. Because it was like, well, wait, why can't we have a say about the new nursing home itself and the design, or just learn more about that? So we learned that there should have been more of an information session first with a Q&A before we started asking for ideas. So that was also reflected in those depth of discussions. In terms of the output, overall, Silvermark put the team from all of your feedback, these action plans, the 6 action plans that were developed, and for the most part, the comments were very positive and appreciative of what came out of it, but it still was left with this question of like, unless this actually happens, can I be that happy with it? Because right now it's documents. So that's where I'm not going to speak much more to the action plans now, and Carolyn will be able to address this more with some announcements after. Sorry, I'm probably getting close to my time.
No, you're fine.
Andrea, they're not giving me any time, so take it off.
I think an indirect measure of satisfaction with what came out was when we started to ask interview participants about what do you imagine in 5 years' time could be in this community hub if it becomes a reality. And the responses were so rich, and just like about 60% could really picture multiple different activities happening there. And the fact that most people could envision themselves being there and making use of this space. And some said it will just be, no matter what's there, I could see myself there. It could be just a social outing. And other people were more specific in terms of wanting a specific type of activity center or the community kitchen ideas and wanting intergenerational things, but they were very rich descriptions. One example, one participant stated, I hope it's a place where if I go to visit my aunt, we can perhaps sit or participate in something together. And spoke to like this, that this hub could be a place where residents of Passamaquoddy Lodge and community members still living at home can do something together and participate together, and it not be so that the residents are so separate from the rest of the community. And I found that one particularly beautiful. Participant transformations, I have a slide that focuses mostly on that, and I'm going to leave the policy and social outcomes to Carolyn and others to speak to after, because it's really more what that side of this meeting is all about. So I mentioned we had those scales. So this was wrapped in with the qualitative data, and we did see some increases in civic engagement, which is the fancy name for community engagement, right? Attitudes and behaviors. There were slight increases there for that could be seen both amongst the 12 individuals that completed that survey, beginning and end, but also qualitatively. People felt like that they were heard and would be interested in doing this kind of thing again. There was also a sense of mobilization. And this was often found in ways of some people were saying, okay, I'm in, like I want to help. What can we do to make this happen now that we've come this far? Like let's not let this just sit in a report on a table. But it was also also found in some of the questions where people were a little bit more skeptical. Like, is this really going to happen? Like what's going to happen next, right? But there was this overall sense of like we are mobilized and in this together as a community. There was also more awareness of the resources and assets that are already in the community. If you remember at the beginning, there was also this asset mapping activity that really listed all of the different resources that are available throughout St. Andrews. And then this was put together in a map by the Silvermark team that sort of showed how they were connected with different organizations in the town. Which I believe is in the project report for community on your table. And again, this belief that, oh, not only are those organizations there, but yeah, maybe if I need them, I'll actually turn to them because maybe someone there does actually care, as opposed to, yeah, it's there, but there's a separation between you and them, right? There was, as I mentioned, there was a lot of comments around feeling connected with those that are here. And I will say at the beginning, I hadn't realized coming into St. Andrews how connected this community already is. So that's not just as a result of this project. We cannot claim that. It is a very connected community, and I would think about 80% of people that participated in the research were also already connected in some other social organization or group. A big chunk were in the Spindrifters walking group, that probably many of you in this room already are, but also in other ways. So that was really impressive, and I think maybe for some other communities, that might not always be the case in other parts of rural New Brunswick. And we did see, and I'm just about finished my piece and I'll pass it off, but it was also nice to see that there was slight increases in this sort of a sense of future security, that like, oh, you know, regardless of whether or not the new nursing home is built and this community hub is built, which I think eventually it will be.
Not I think, it will be.
See, Carolyn saying it will be. But some people were saying, at least they're asking these questions, and at least they care, and at least I don't feel so separate from them anymore, and maybe it will be better going to visit my loved ones that are there now. So there was sort of this increased sense of future security and moving forward and hope for what could be in the coming years, and also that you're not alone in what that hope is, that there's like a sense of a shared future amongst all of you here. So that's really what we saw. I'm very happy to share, like the executive summary was sent to everybody that participated in the research, and the full research report is available through Passamaquoddy Lodge if they want to release that or not. But anyways, I'm very happy to share more. But I will leave it at that, and I will introduce Aimée Foreman, who is the CEO for Silvermark. Aimée, this is actually her first time to St. Andrews for this project, but she was involved in many ways with like her staff that came down and helped to run the events, and they're responsible for putting together the beautiful documents that are really shine a light on what my research report does not look as pretty as these do.
Or as small.
Yeah, or not nearly as small. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrea. Well, good morning, everyone. As Andrea mentioned, I'm really happy to be here in St. Andrews. I've spent a lot of time over the years in St. Andrews, particularly working with Passamaquoddy Lodge in their pursuit for a new nursing home, and I share Carolyn's message that it will happen. I know everyone is anxious for that day to come. So this project was a really interesting one for us. In the Silvermark team, we work with groups who are trying to improve the quality of life of older adults, and that includes operators, communities, municipalities, the province themselves, across a number of our provinces. But this one was unique, I think, in its approach in terms of engagement. And really, our team learned a lot. I'm going to echo or maybe underline a couple of points that Andrea made and even Muriel's opening remarks about what happened in this project, but then what do we learn from that and how do we share that knowledge forward for you here in your own community, but certainly how do we take what's happened almost like a case study in St. Andrews community and be able to share that with other communities who want to pursue particularly aging in place strategies or involve older adults in more civic engagement. So there's been a reference to 2 reports. One of them is on your table, which is the project results for communities. So this is the snapshot document, if you will, that you can all take with you, that really synthesizes the project and the outcomes, and certainly has been drawn very much from the research results that Andrea has presented, but also the learnings of our entire project team. So I just have some very simple slides, and you can flip pages in this as you wish, but certainly you all can take it with you today. The contents in this document are the project summary, the engagement process, and so as was referenced earlier, I think you saw the timeline graph, there were really 5 sessions of engagement from July of last year to February of this year that fell within the parameters of the project. And you can see here this little diagram that's included in the report. Those 5 engagement sessions resulted in over 80 citizens participating in the process in one form or another. And over 1,000 ideas were generated out of that engagement. So when you step back and think about how many ideas really came into the fold and then what got synthesized down into the action plans that Andrea referenced are around the room, all those action plans are printed in the document, and Carolyn's going to speak to those a little bit later this morning. So that's number 3, the section on action plans. The community asset map, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on today. Andrea just referenced it, and you have a copy of it here. And it really is, asset mapping is just looking as what's the strengths within community, coming at things from a strength-based lens and saying, okay, what relationships, what organizations already exist, and who should we bring together, or who can we draw upon in terms of resources if we're pursuing a particular initiative. So the initiative can be the hub, the initiative can be specific like a pool, any of the ones that the community has put forth. And then considerations for future engagement is really where I want to give a couple of comments, and then Muriel acknowledged that we're very appreciative of the funding both from the provincial and federal governments. So the one thing I'll say on the first page is just there is a reference to aging in place, and the entirety of this project is framed around a strategy to age in place. And really our project team was starting off saying, how does a community answer the question of aging in place strategies for themselves? And aging in place is just really the reference that's used to allow people to remain in their own home for as long as they're able and as long as they desire. And we know from a plethora of studies, you probably know from your own perspectives, I certainly know from mine, that over 90% of older adults would like to remain in their own home for as long as possible. And so really thinking from a community perspective, what does each community need in order to facilitate that? It seems logical that it's important to ask community what they need. But this was a unique opportunity to research that process, and as was mentioned, research the results of being able to engage in that process and whether that had a positive effect on older adults in and of itself, and Andrea has shared that it did. So those 5 sessions I won't talk through and that were referenced, and the action plans, but I do want to make one little note here on the considerations for future engagement before I go to the other deliverable, which is really the blueprint, which is the larger document. There's two things that we said, and if you flip, you can look, they're on the last page of this little packet. For engagement here, for you folks who have engaged in the process, for folks that will be coming in and out of the process. And that's really the first recommendation, is number one is to ensure that all participants are informed of the activities and actions to date. So Andrea made mention of this. When we kicked off last July as a collective project team, we went into that initial session and shared the details of the project, like what was intended to happen. But as it was determined, lots of folks wanted to know more about Passamaquoddy Lodge's pursuit of a new nursing home and understand what the status of that was, what the relationship, as Andrea mentioned, you've had perhaps with Passamaquoddy Lodge over the past, and just understand even the province's stance on that pursuit or that approval. And so really it's important to recognize and step back, and we tried to do that in the midst of, as Andrea referenced, a shortened time frame. There has to be an opportunity for leaders that have been acting, advocating for progress in community to really be available to citizens coming into the fold for Q&A, to ask questions, to really sort of make sure everybody has the same foundational knowledge before you start engagement anew. And that's really what we saw and we took away from the research and the recommendations, as Andrea said, out of 15, many of them were related to input, is really understanding that civic engagement means that citizens can participate in a way that they wish. And the reality of that is people come in and out of the process at different times. And so making sure that everybody feels like they have the same baseline knowledge, if you can spend the time in making sure that's introduced and managed throughout progress, people are mobilizing at the same level. You're moving people forward together, as opposed to people just saying, well, what about, and what happened here? And so we really would recommend, as St. Andrew's community continues to engage, to ensure that this project, the pursuit of the Passamaquoddy Lodge new nursing home, other activities, even maybe the wellness center and how that came to be, that information is shared or made available as people come in and out of the process. It feels very logical to say that. It's kind of common sense. But when you are advocating and you're ready to go, and some people have been working, in some cases, years on a particular initiative, and new people are coming in, decades, and new people are coming in, it's easy to sort of forget that, oh, okay, we need to keep setting our new baseline and to really nurture that over time. The second one is to pursue engagement that is inclusive, accessible, and diverse. Now, this obviously applies beyond just the perspective from older adulthood. It implies making sure we have diversity and equity and belonging included in the planning and design and delivery of any engagement session. But as Muriel mentioned, and as you got the notice, we changed spots, locations today, even because of that accessibility factor. And you need to place weight on the importance of that and be willing to make a pivot or make a change if you really want to pursue engagement that's inclusive. So this is something also that we all kind of know, but you got to step outside of yourself sometime and say, oh, okay, this means we have to make a different decision. We have to choose a different location. We have to think of a printing budget, so we're printing copies, not just making everything available online. These are things that we have to do with intention. Okay. So this is the project results for community. As mentioned, it's a very brief document compared to the very expansive report that we've had to give to the funders. And we're going to allow some Q&A, so I'm happy to answer questions about this or the next deliverable that I speak to as well. So to that end, I'll just speak a little bit to the blueprint for communities. So when we started this project, one of the deliverables included in the application was to create a blueprint that the learnings from this project could be transferred to other communities, that other communities could make use of the research, the outcomes, even the learning from the project team and citizens who participated. So this document, we also have a few copies printed. So if you would like a copy of this document, please feel welcome to ask. It will be made available electronically. It's available electronically through the funder, Healthy Seniors Pilot Project. I'm going to say tag Emma, you're it, if somebody really in community wants one, to be able to get your hands on a printed copy. But we're going to make it available, and the funder is also distributing it to other communities across New Brunswick and other jurisdictions. So that's all just starting to happen. So we're glad to give you a snapshot of this today. And so in this document, we talk about what is civic engagement. So as Andrea mentioned, it's really community engagement, but it's with the viewpoint that civic engagement can inform policy, that it can inform investment, that it can inform innovation. So it's not engagement just for engagement's sake. It really is to inform the civic priorities of a particular community. And then why it's important, which I'll speak to for a moment, and the benefits for older adults, and then really the meat of the blueprint is the how and being able to give people some guide around this. So here's the little definition in the blueprint about civic engagement, so I won't repeat that. I really want to underscore what are the benefits for older adults. And so there's really 4 here in this little diagram. And first and foremost is social connection. And so we know that the greatest plagues to aging well are loneliness, isolation, and boredom. And so when you think about what the antidotes of that are, certainly connection is first and foremost. Giving people an opportunity to connect in and of itself helps us age well. And certainly Andrea spoke about the references in the qualitative research that pointed to that, as well as some of the scales used in the quantitative research. So really looking to be able to connect with people who care about the same issues, develop new friendships, strengthen friendships, get back in the same room together, especially post-isolation with COVID and whatnot. That's important in older adulthood, regardless of what the topic is that's being discussed. The second, personal fulfillment. When I say having boredom or lack of purpose, that also tells us that it's really a plague to aging well. And so giving people an opportunity to work on something that they feel they can contribute towards with their experience, their knowledge, their skills, is incredibly important to our well-being. So making sure we understand that it's a fulfilling activity for older adults as well, to be able to be simply asked, as Andrea referenced. Sometimes we just, as people, we just want to be asked what our opinion is or how we can contribute. Lifelong learning, so learning doesn't stop at a certain age, and so recognizing that there's an opportunity to develop new awareness, new skills, to understand societal shifts with different populations. We had hoped there would be more intergenerational engagement in this particular project. We made efforts there, but being able to mix generations is a real positive if you can in your engagement pursuits. So we've got some recommendations to that end. And then just acknowledging that ultimately the act of civic engagement enhances quality of life. This is consistent with the age-friendly framework by the World Health Organization. Obviously, St. Andrews being an age-friendly certified community. I don't need to do any convincing here, but understanding that these types of activities add to resilience, add to well-being, and ultimately to quality of life. So really, when we're talking about this, we've then laid out in the blueprint 2 things that I think are really important that I'll just touch on before we open up to Q&A. One is why you're engaging. And so there are really 5 reasons to engage. Sometimes you just engage a community to inform. And so that's what we're saying is, we could have had maybe a standalone information session to let people know what had been happening with Passamaquoddy Lodge's pursuit with the new nursing home, or dovetail it into this project, where really you're going into that session not to gather ideas, you're really just looking to share. So often that's the case, you just want to have an information session. But there are different purposes for sessions. You want to consult, involve people, collaborate, empower, and this blueprint gives all sorts of definition and example to those things. Ultimately, we were looking to empower. We were looking for the community to create or to co-create with you, which is what is found in the action plans. And Carolyn's going to go through those with you. But it's important to recognize that sometimes you need to move through those sequences of engagement really to get to the empowerment stage to make sure everybody has the same baseline information as I mentioned. And so then the last point I'll make before we open it up is really about how to map a plan. So if you're a community, if you're a group and you want to proceed in engagement, using this document or this deliverable to say, how am I going to map my plan? We've given specific recommendations to the planning phase, to the promoting phase, and to the engagement phase. And really, time is your friend, especially in the planning phase. And that's what Andrea referenced. Our project was squeezed based on the funding approvals and the timeline we were given. And I think we just kind of went go, go, go. And so this is great learnings for us as a project team to say, how would we do things differently as well? But it also takes a long time to promote, to make sure the word gets out, to be able to do that through different channels, to be inclusive in that regard. And then certainly on the engaging phase, even as I just mentioned, knowing why you're engaging. Don't engage just for engagement's sake. We know there's a lot of apathy, especially when you have a government say, oh, we're going to engage, or we're going to consult the public, right? Really, if you even go to one of those kinds of sessions, I would encourage you to demand of those organizers, why are we here? What do you need from us? What are we going to be able to contribute? So those are the things that came out, certainly in the questions that you folks as participants made us stop and say, oh, okay, right, this is how we can package this back and apply it in the future. So those three phases of engagement then reference the 15 recommendations that came out of Andrea's research. So that's really the bulk of this report, is those 15 recommendations. And I'm not going to walk through them all today, but happy for those who, if you want a copy of the hard copies that have been printed today, we're happy to distribute them and happy to meet one-on-one or have a conversation if anybody wants to do a deeper dive into that blueprint. As I mentioned, the blueprint is going to be shared through the Healthy Seniors pilot project to other communities. It will be shared back to government. It goes along with policy recommendations we've made to the provincial government about their processes of engagement ongoing and what they support and fund communities in terms of engagement process, that there really needs to be an investment because communities are ready to invest their energy and their wisdom and their time. And it doesn't take a lot, if you will, in terms of financial resources to be able to support that. But it does take some patience, and it takes some openness. The one point I would leave you with in terms of engagement that was we were aware of out of this project, but it's one that I would sort of repeat anytime I'm talking to folks who want to mobilize community or consult or empower community, is you have to be willing not to know the result. You have to be open to whatever the community decides is important. And that's why many times when you're engaging in the sessions, they're a little bit fluid, or you ask some questions to sort of start harvesting information and ideas. And in this project, we have the benefit of the research side of that as well. But we would not have set out in this project and said, there are going to be 6 action plans and this is what they're going to be for. These are your action plans, and these are the action plans you folks will mobilize and that you have determined are needed for this community. They may not be what's needed in St. Stephen. They may not be needed in Bockus. They may not be needed. Those communities, we want to help extend the knowledge from this project as how they can proceed, but they need to design, and I suspect Suzanne's talk on Nursing Home with White Walls will give a nod to that, to communities deciding for themselves what they need to support aging in place strategies, and to really have our governments just support that process and empower citizens to make those changes themselves. So really pleased to be part of. Andrea, come on up if you like. I think we've got a couple of minutes before we break,
Yep,
Muriel.
just put it on the next
For any questions.
Can I just make a suggestion?
Sure.
I think there are a few people here today from other communities.
Oh, yes.
Maybe identify, and we can give you a copy of the blueprint.
Yeah.
I'm from St. Stephen.
Oh, okay, welcome.
Yep. Anyone else from another community?
Sherry here? I'm here. I was going to say I represent for the whole region.
Yep. So we have a few minutes before we break. I know both of our reviews in terms of the research and the deliverables of the projects is very high level. We're happy to really answer any questions, and then I know we're going to break and pass the microphone on to Carolyn, who's going to dig into the action plans and what's happening on the ground. But yes, please.
I'm wondering if maybe you or Andrea could just read through the 15 recommendations, just so we have a sense of the concreteness of what came out of this going forward.
Sure. I'll read through just the high bullet, okay? So for planning, under the planning phase, identify current interests and activities. So know what's happening already in your community. Ensure sufficient planning time. This has been referenced by both of us a few times. Recognize that history and relations can impact participation. This was really the nod, Andrea, you were giving to the relationship community members have with Passamaquoddy Lodge in the past, and other relationships that existed in community. Chime in anywhere, Andrea, please.
You're on a roll.
Hold information sessions. So this is what you hear us both saying. Making sure you're giving sufficient time for the community to know from whoever's been championing or leading other activities or actions, what's the status of those things, right? Because we often hear them little bits of here and there in a community, but if we're not immersed, we kind of don't know what's the status, or how does the government even approve that there's a new nursing home? Include peer researchers and community ambassadors. That was a pivot at the very top of the project, and I think, Andrew, you've spoken to how valuable it was to have how valuable we felt it was to have the peer researchers partake in this process. Ensure roles are clear. It's really important even within a project team, so to make sure everybody knows what the roles are and what's expected of them. So those are the ones in terms of planning. In terms of promoting, offering multiple ways to engage. This is tricky. Look, everybody today wants to put a form up on a website, and we keep saying it's not sufficient. So knowing that there are multiple ways to engage in rural communities, we have to think about transportation, we have to think about the seasonality, winter months, all of those kinds of factors. So really trying to figure out how to apply best practice in universal design that's accessible means to engage, but also just having choice in the ways to engage. Prioritize accessibility as a standalone recommendation. Engage in widespread recruitment. So I made a hint to that in terms of just because you're designing something for older adults doesn't mean you only involve the older adults. If you can be intergenerational, the same would go is if you are pursuing something for youth, don't only engage youth, engage the older adults in communities. So wherever we can be multi-generational, we want to be able to support that. And then when you're actually engaging in the sessions, when you're actually participating in civic engagement, establish democratic and inclusive participation. This would include making sure people are aware even of dementia-friendly. So I know Ben's here with the Alzheimer's Society, but how to engage with folks who may be living with dementia and are participating in that process. So I make that reference, especially when referring to older adults. Encourage participants to dream and think big. This really comes out of your work, Andrea, in terms of how you even position some of the research. Sometimes people are so immersed in the practical that they can't think beyond. And really, we want to push ourselves to think beyond. We can always pull back a little bit in figuring out how to get to that dream, but we should be trying to think big. Use asset mapping to raise awareness of existing resources. So we made mention of that, and that's in the deliverable on your tables. Be open and transparent. And I'd say this one has a bit of a long paragraph, but it can be frustrating at times to participate and kind of know, like, is this actually going to happen? What happened before, or I thought this was already approved, or those kinds of things. So being incredibly open in transportation in civic engagement and community-based work is critical. Capture participant transformations. So it's one of the real value out of this project is being able to say to our funders at the federal and the provincial government that the results of your research actually had a benefit to the participants. It's not just what the participants are going to have as outcomes, it's what their personal transformation stories, that in and of itself is supporting aging in place and aging well. So even if you were not undertaking a research project, you as a host organization or group can gather some testimonies. So even just doing it from that level of start, midway, beginning, very, very powerful to be able to have some of that storytelling, that narrative infused into projects, especially when you're trying to convince decision makers. Yeah, please.
That's where those annoying attendee satisfaction surveys come into play. And a lot of times, I mean, I've been at other events too where people think, oh, I don't want to bother everyone and give them this. But if you can plan in your agenda 5 or 10 minutes near the end to get people to do that, and actually we were not planning it for today because this is our closing one, so I will say that now. But it really gave us crucial information from people that weren't participating in the research, right? Like where we could hear like both the positive comments and that we could capture to be able to say, okay, this is happening, but also some of the criticisms or some of the things, this didn't work that well for me. I mean, that's where a lot of concerns about hearing came out from that first event in the big gym. There was a lot of concerns about hearing issues as an accessibility issue. And so then we started to try to make some pivots. I don't think we ever got it totally right. And that's the reality with pilot projects also, but it allowed us to focus on that and try to make changes along the way, instead of it waiting till we got to this report stage and then say, oh, I wish we'd done this differently, and we would recommend others do it differently.
No, and the last one is share social and policy, share policy and social outputs with the participants. So often we can, even now, right? So this is the fall, and the last formal gathering out of this project was February. And the project team talked about, can we gather again in March or May or fall? You know, we had to really think about when will we be ready to share meaningfully back to citizens. But it's really important to be sharing and having a feedback loop to citizens. As I mentioned, our project work goes to the province along with policy recommendations, and those policy recommendations are rooted in how they can support continued civic engagement, how they can expand on that, how they can leverage some of their age-friendly networks, how it can dovetail with dementia-friendly community initiatives, but that they need to be patient and not prescriptive, that you need to let communities lead themselves. It is the best practice in community development, nothing for me without me, or nothing for us without us, but that really hasn't been the practice when it comes to serving older adults and supporting aging in place in real practical terms in each community. Right? And so that goes from everything from program services, the development of bricks and mortar resources like a hub. And yeah, I think it's been a really rich experience to be part of this project, and we're really hopeful. I actually just got a very positive note yesterday from the funders wanting to talk to us more about how to share this knowledge forward. So we're encouraged. So we're hopeful that it will have some real impact.
Mm-hmm. And that piece about sharing back, like with all of you or in any community engagement project to share back, it does sound so common sense. And yet when you're working within a project, it's so easy to be like, okay, we want to, like we, as in your small team, we want to gather this information from the community, and then we're going to scurry it back like nuts, like squirrels connecting nuts, and we're going to take it and hoard it here and do what we will with it, and forget that it's not just yours any longer. So it does come to speak to that piece of like what Aimée said earlier about being okay with not always knowing what that final result's going to be. We have to go with what we're actually hearing from the community and allowing, so it's a sharing of power. It's you know, being vulnerable, and I look at people from Passamaquoddy Lodge on this because, you know, they were leaders in this role, and they had to make themselves vulnerable in order to undertake this, and they had to hear some of those criticisms that came out early on. But the beauty is that it started to shift by the end. Some of the comments and the relational aspects were shifting. And yeah, as Aimée said, it's been a real honor to be a part of this project. I know we're just like right at our moment, but right at it.
Yeah.
I'll just check, I see one more hand. Yeah, please.
So I'm just wondering, what can we realistically expect in terms of feedback from government? So this all goes to government. Mm-hmm. A lot of work has been done. The community has made itself vulnerable and open, and recommendations are going to government. So what can we realistically expect in terms of feedback from government?
I would parcel that answer into two parts. One, I think after we break and we resume, you're going to hear some responses from government in relation to your action plans, in relation to what this community has indicated as important to support aging in place. In terms of the project in its entirety and what we're recommending or trying to share in knowledge transfer of engagement processes, I would say we need to be patient. It's not a fast process for them to really do the post-mortem and review after the projects. I think a lot of it dovetails with what's happening. I think you'll hear that with Suzanne. So hopefully this is just one more catalyst that really convinces the province and certainly municipalities to invest in this process. So I don't have a clear answer for the part two, but we shouldn't stop asking. You certainly have a commitment from us that we'll continue to ask, and if there's updates through Passamaquoddy Lodge, they'll share them with community, but it's not a fast process, for sure.
Can you tell us who specifically in government your reports will go to?
Yes, the funding through the Healthy Seniors Pilot Project goes through the Department of Social Development. Although I will say Department of Health is very aware and immersed in that project. And then also they use a monitoring body out of the University of New Brunswick to evaluate the projects. So also that information is disseminated at UNB as well. Any other questions? No, well, I think we're...
What
Muriel?
great presentation. Thank you. Thank you. We're so lucky to have such wonderful presenters and make this information so informative and entertaining. Thank you. So without further ado, I will ask Carolyn Davies to come forward and talk specifically about the action plans.
I like that word, action. First of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the project team that ran this. They have done a phenomenal job. They had to deal with somebody pretty demanding, and yet they met the deadlines. Andrea said we got I think you said 17 months or 15 months. We really only had a year. We were supposed to have 2 years. We had a year. So they did a fabulous job, and I want to give them all a round of applause. None of this would have been possible without the help of the leadership team at the Lodge. They just go above and beyond. We actually pay them to do some work, and yet they still find time to help out on initiatives like this. And again, thank you guys. I'd also be remiss if I didn't acknowledge we have a number of the board members from Passamaquoddy Lodge, present and past, in the room. Their commitment to this community and to making it a better place is why we're here today. So thank you to them. Yes, Mary. And last but not least, and this is where I'm going to start, we have all but one of the age-friendly advisory committee members here, and that's where this project did start. Passamaquoddy Lodge, 2017, yes, it feels like 17 years, looked into how to better integrate the services the Lodge and the advice the Lodge can offer into the community. And the age-friendly initiative under the World Health Organization was the means that we looked into to fulfill that. Coming out of that, we had tremendous support from the town. We had, at one point, I think, 22 or 26 people actively involved in the age-friendly initiative. I mean, they represented the whole spectrum of this community. One of them is sitting in the back over there quietly, Kevin, our fire chief. There are other people in this community I could single out. We had people from the churches. We had people from the school boards. We had, you name it, we had them on the committee, and it was fabulous. We got an action plan. We have seen tremendous progress to make this age-friendly for people from 0 to 100. I guess it isn't 100 and 0. But, you know, this is what we're about. And a lot of what happened with this group here in terms of coming up with this action plan either reinforced some of the feedback we got through the age-friendly initiative or gave us better ideas as to how to better serve aging in place. And I'm just going back to a comment Andrea made. I know that when we started off, 12 months ago, Leslie and I stood up in front of you and talked for about 10 minutes about Passamaquoddy Lodge and what we were doing there. For those of you who've heard me go on and on and on and on about Passamaquoddy Lodge, you would obviously know that 10 minutes was nowhere near sufficient. But we were trying to get this community to tell us what you need to age in place, and we didn't understand the necessity to know what Passamaquoddy Lodge as a nursing home, how that you wanted to know what was happening there and how that would integrate. And for that, I apologize. We heard you, as Andrea and Aimée both said, and we did our best to try and make sure that you understood where we were at, and as a result, we have the feedback we need. We have 6 priorities. I think there are about 100 that were narrowed down. I mean, you know, there are more ideas out there, and we'll get to them next week. No, sorry, next year. So Brad, stay tuned. What we did is we looked at the 6 initiatives, and Passamaquoddy Lodge, in looking at developing and building a new replacement facility, was looking to incorporate an adult day program. We didn't tell you that at the beginning. You told us that was a priority. And that's where your feedback was invaluable for us, because we thought it was a priority. And you're going to hear from Suzanne, I see you're nodding. You told us it's a priority. You confirmed what we suspected, but we didn't know. And so we are going to look at implementing an adult day program in the new complex, because it has specific provincial regulations governing the space requirements, what you can do, et cetera, et cetera. So we will incorporate that space in our new community hub. A pool. I know we'd all discussed the pool. I don't think it's going to be the pool some of you envisioned, but it will be a therapy pool. And I think a therapy pool will meet the needs of everybody in the community, whether it's a child who's maybe had some, heaven forbid, been in a car accident or something and has to learn to use their legs again, whether it's a resident of the nursing home, whether it's somebody in the community who has a bad knee, wants to go and strengthen it, it'll be there, and it'll be for everybody. And that, I think, goes to the point about residents using what's the amenities that are in the community hub, and vice versa. The resource center. We had identified space for that. I'm not going to steal anybody's thunder, so I'm not going to say anything more. Just to go back to that for a second, one of the other things that has come up time and time again today and throughout this whole process was accessibility. And accessibility is not just being able to get into an elevator to get to the 2nd or 3rd floor. Accessibility encompasses, and I won't go into it, a lot of other issues. But one of the things when you live in a community that has a historic area, so the buildings were built at a time when there were elevators. They have steps in and out of them. They have stairs that you have to try and carry furniture up and down. We weren't as smart as the Dutch. We didn't put the, help me here, Marie, put the things at the top so we could raise the furniture from the outside. But when we went to realize this week that we, Drew Haven pulled out all the stops to try and get the stair lift in. As Muriel said, supply chain issues, we all know what that means. Or we'd probably all rather not know what that means. This whole new complex is going to be accessible. It's going to be accessible in every sense of the word, and that's why we need it. If somebody couldn't come here today because they're afraid of elevators, or we were in a building where there were steps and they couldn't get in, this new complex, this community hub, is going to be accessible to everybody. And so I just want to make that point. Kathy's right here, she's listening to me. Oh, she's heard it. She drank the Kool-Aid. She's okay. The other component of this, and this is, I'm switching hats, the Age-Friendly Advisory Committee, the town sort of asked us to look at the feedback coming from this group, and we incorporated these three, the activity center, the workout space, and the community kitchen into the age-friendly action plan. And again, I'll let Brad speak to where that's coming from, but these are all on our radar. And if any of you know Sandy or Louise or Jamie or Gary or Rob Weir, they're all like bulldogs. And if somebody doesn't start moving on these, they'll make sure they do. Oh, and Annette, sorry. Annette, I didn't mean to forget you. I can't. Oh, is she gone? Oh, there you are. I can't see you. Yeah. So they're there, and these two will happen. You gave us feedback, and Andrea shared, the first draft of her report, and I was sitting there going, holy, well, that's as far as I got. People are really doubtful that the efforts and the input they gave us, that anything's going to come of it. Let me tell you, we heard you, and now I'm going to ask our minister responsible for seniors. That's you, the Honourable Kathy Bockus, who is also the, interesting enough, the chair of the Special Committee on Accessibility, to come up and say a few words.
Well, she's a hard act to follow, but I'll do my best. Thank you, Carolyn. And welcome, everybody. This is an exciting day. I know it is for me. As the minister responsible for seniors and chair of the Select Committee on Accessibility, today is very special for me. And for all the seniors living in this county, I want to thank everyone for their input and energy that you've committed to identifying, this is like talking to a hedgehog here. Move over. To identifying and moving forward the initiatives to support programs which will lead to more healthy seniors remaining longer in their homes across Charlotte County. Today, can I have a drum roll, please? Oh, excellent. I'm very pleased to announce funding of $224,000 for the Charlotte County Seniors Resource Center. This funding comes from the province's Nursing Home Without Walls program. And a big thank you to Mayor Brad Woodside and the St. Andrews Council. Oh, I keep doing that, Brad. I keep doing that. It's showing my age and that I lived in Fredericton. I just go, Brad Woodside. Ugh. Can we re-roll that, Florence? I'll start over. A big thank you to Mayor Brad Henderson and the St. Andrews Council. The Seniors Resource Center, I'm told, will be based here in St. Andrews in the Wellness Center at a minimal rent. So thank you, Brad. The new Seniors Resource, yes. The new Seniors Resource Center will serve seniors in need across the whole county. This one-year grant will allow for the hiring of a full-time director, and it will also pay for a staff member to spend 3 days a week crisscrossing the county, meeting with seniors in their homes and identifying what help is available for them and what they need. The move-in date is expected to be in early October. Are we still on? Okay. With the resource center fully operational by the end of that month. And normal operations will be Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 p.m. So the key roles of the Resource Center, and I'm sure you've probably heard these already, but I want to reinforce them, will be to pursue home visits, to check on the needs and well-being of seniors, and what can be done to support those in need. And act as a conduit to provide access to other agencies and services available for seniors in New Brunswick, and provide educational support to help seniors cope with ever-changing technology which affects their lives. And I can't tell you the number of times I've had people ask me, seniors ask me, how do we get on the internet? How do we access things? And I know I've spoken to the staff in the department when they talk about rolling out initiatives and information, and I said, okay, they said, we'll put it up on social media. I said, well, that's all well and good, but please remember, my mother included, who's 92 and lives in Hampton, still listens to the radio, watches TV, and wants things in her newspaper. So I've really been pushing for that. So there is a potential to renew this project depending on its success, and I'm sure it will be successful. A second-year goal would be to provide care hours in the homes when they are not normally available. So this would help our seniors, especially those who need evening and overnight home care, stay at home. So today's funding announcement is yet another building block to make our communities age-friendly. It supports aging in place, which in turn allows seniors to continue living at home in their own communities. And that's so important because that almost every senior I've talked to, well, no senior I've talked to have said, I want to go to a nursing home. They want to stay in their own homes. So at this time, I'd like to acknowledge the role of the board and staff of Passamaquoddy Lodge in leading the age-friendly initiative and flowing from that into this Healthy Seniors Pilot project. All of you. And they continue to demonstrate that leadership in taking on 3 of the priorities identified to support the aging in place: the adult day program, the therapy pool, and this resource center. And I want to thank them for their continuing commitment to seniors and to the greater community of Charlotte County. Congratulations on your successful application. I look forward to visiting the Seniors Resource Center once it's operational. Thank you. That's one announcement.
That's, yeah. Thank you, Kathy. Sorry, Minister Bockus. It's still Kathy. I've invited the minister to join us for lunch, so she will be around if people want to chat with her afterwards. But this is tremendous news. And this happened over the summer months. I think we made the application in July, and we got told we were getting the money in early September. I am also pleased to announce we have the director for our new resource center, Miss Emma Keach. And I know Emma will do a fantastic job, and the process is underway to hire the other staff members. So this is, as the minister said, is a county-wide resource. We have had a great partnership to date with the Wellness Center. They are dealing with people every day of the week who need access to additional information. Their clientele does not just come from St. Andrews, does not just come from Bayside or the place formerly known as Shamcook. They come from across the county and beyond, actually. I know some friends of mine live in Fredericton, and they come here to the Wellness Center. So it is a resource for more than just us, and I think by having Sherry here and St. Steve, we were hoping to get more representation from other municipalities, but we're willing to help and willing to share, and that's where that's at. So I noticed he didn't bring his trophy. Like next year, the volunteer team's going to be a little better prepared, and we're going to give you a run for your money in the Dragon Boat Festival. Just saying. I'd like to invite His Worship Mayor Brad Henderson up to say a few words. And and if anything you have to say about the Dragon Boat Festival, just reflect on the success of the overall.
I didn't bring the trophy today, but I can talk about it. She forgot to say we are the Katie's Cove record holders as well, and we are a very modest team about it, as you can tell. Minister Kathy Bokebeck, I appreciate you being here. Minister Kathy Bockus, we appreciate the announcement, and I know sometimes when you go through these exercises, and we've all done it probably a lot, sometimes it feels like you just kind of spend hours and put together a document and then it just sits on a shelf. I can honestly say one of the frustrating things for the municipality is we sometimes, we'll fund an action plan and then the action plan doesn't become a reality, and they're not cheap to do. And I find that a very frustrating process. But what I really have enjoyed throughout this process, and some of you have been here 4 to 5 times, I think I've caught 3 of them, is not only do you have this community asset map that was included in your package, but even before it's presented today, we've already started working on it and making this reality. That announcement, huge part of it, but the municipality, and I will say that we only have 2 bubbles on this. And I'm pretty sure that the other slide you said that we are the activity space too, and there's no bubble. But my point on that is the municipality should be a bubble on every single one of these. As a town council, these are all things that are very critical, and your feedback was so valuable and your engagement was. I do want to say that I'm very fortunate Councillor Harlan's here, but when it comes to the wellness center and well-being in our community, as a council, we went from 6 to 9 individuals, and I can honestly tell you that it's making us stronger because what's really unique about our council is there's people from all different backgrounds, and what she has brought to the table, not just for relevant to this, but all across hospitals and other conversations we had. I appreciate you being here and all the work that you're doing. I do want to say that we are going to continue to work on this asset map in particular and have these services in the community. But I do want to say that some of the other comments that were made, we have to get better on. And accessibility, I'll be completely honest with you, I'm embarrassed by our downtown. And I'm not taking a shot at business owners. I know that they're heritage buildings. They've been there for a while. I understand there's not a lot of land around there. Literally, most of those buildings are right on the sidewalk. But we have to get better. We like, there's no excuses on that. Ability New Brunswick has come in. They've done an assessment. Some of them are actually deemed almost impossible due to the guidelines around ramps to do. But with that being said, there is a handful that we can make accessible. And the other thing is, as a municipality, we're going through zoning bylaws right now as part of municipal reform. I don't think a new business should be able to be built in this community without a ramp. If you can't... And to be honest, I'm a little shocked that regulations don't require that right now, but the truth is they actually technically don't. We have a building that was built within the last couple of years that does not have a ramp, and that can't happen again.
Level access.
Yep.
Yeah.
Build at the street level.
Yep.
Yep.
Don't even have to ramp it.
That would be the ideal situation, but nonetheless, find a plan to make it accessible. And I have even Jaden Hannon, I don't know if anyone knows Jaden, but she actually had a meeting with me. There's a young individual in our community that just graduated from Sir James Academy a couple of years ago. She actually wants to make an initiative that she's taking on. And in the last couple of weeks, I've reached out to the town, the Business Improvement Association. So I've got a lot of emails, and I don't want to harp too much on this, and a lot of letters from people that have visited our community and are thoroughly disappointed by us. So let's own it. Let's own it. And that's the first step, is own it. I just wanted to, once again, thank everybody for being here. I look forward to the many conversations that we're going to have. Usually a plan like this takes a number of years, but I already see 3 or 4 of these starting to become a reality already, and you hardly ever see that. So your feedback was taken seriously, and I look forward to hopefully having some more community wins with all of you. So thank you, and thank you for all your work, as well as the project team. We thoroughly, again, appreciate it. So thank you.
I know that he's being modest, but I would like to add that his staff is currently, as we speak, working on finding space for our activity center and our workout space. So thank you, Mayor. I'd like to now invite one of our board members from Passamaquoddy Lodge up, Brenda Hoxema. I have a little anecdote to share about Brenda. It's actually not about her, it's about her husband. So, no, it's not that kind of information. No, it's just so that you know. Earlier it was mentioned that we have a lot of skills in this community and that people just step up and do things. For my sins, I managed to get some money to buy 2 new docks for the paddling club. And I don't know why anybody who thinks that somebody who can actually manage to write a grant application knows what to do with the things they finally get the money for. I have never owned a dock in my life. Never built a dock in my life. I don't even know how to describe a dock. So Brenda's husband, who understands those things, gave me advice, directed me as to who and where to go and find a contractor to build the docks. And then when I'm sitting there going, oh shoot, I forgot they have to be transported here. Oh, what a concept. He took over that, arranged for transportation, arranged for them to be put into the cove. And then he and some of his, unfortunately some of them aren't here today, but a few of his buddies, Roger, Mark, and Vern, put them together. And that's what this community is about. That's what you guys are about. And just to say that, Brenda, I know you are just like your husband, so get up here and do the introduction.
So I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today. She's a registered nurse. She also is a professor at the School of Nursing at the University of Moncton, where she holds a research chair in population aging, as well as the director of the Center of Aging. Her program of research focuses on the multiple facets of aging in place. She has a special interest in older adults living in official language minority communities. She is recognized for advancing practice to support older adults to get to age at home, and has developed an approach to support aging in place titled Nursing Home Without Walls. She has provided leadership in the development of a provincial strategy on aging, as well as a national level. She is a past chairperson of the National Seniors Council and past president of the Canadian Association of Gerontology. She has worked with older adults for over 30 years, first as a community health nurse, and now as a professor and a researcher. Her guidance and continued mentorship will be invaluable to us and the success of our projects as well. May I present Dr. Suzanne Dupuis-Blanchard.
That was quite the introduction. Thank you so much, Brenda. Minister Bockus, pleasure to have you here today and to make that announcement. I had chills as you were presenting the Resource Center and speaking about aging in place and nursing home without walls. And thank you so much for being here and for your voice and your presence. Yeah, thank you. Mayor Anderson as well, thank you. It's important for these people to be here to listen to what you have to say, and I'm here because of that as well. I don't know who was on the board at that time, but I remember in 2018 or 2019, before the world ended and started again, I feel like it's such a long time ago, being invited to Passamaquoddy Lodge and talking or speaking to the board about this idea that I had called Nursing Home Without Walls. And at that time, there was funding that was being discussed through the Healthy Seniors Pilot Project, but that had not been secured yet. But already at that time, Passamaquoddy Lodge leadership, the board, their staff, had already envisioned their role beyond just institutional nursing home care. They had already thought about what they could do for the community. And this, now that I'm getting to know more about St. Andrews, it's not surprising anymore because you are such a close-knit community. When I think of St. Andrews, I think about people coming together and being so connected about the needs of their community, but also wanting to do something about it. And honestly, listening to the presentation this morning from Andrea and Aimée and listening to the work that has been done, congratulations, because that's how we get things done. It's starting with the community, listening to what people have to say, but moving forward and taking action. And that's where it gets challenging, right? It's easy to do the surveys and to look at what the needs are, but what are we going to do with that information? And what was presented before, earlier this morning, is really the foundation of Nursing Home Without Walls. It's listening to the needs of older adults in the community, the caregivers, and being able to respond to that. Let me tell you a bit about Nursing Home Without Walls. So it is a Healthy Seniors pilot project, by the way. So you've heard about that. It has moved beyond that. So the social development and the health department at the provincial government actually included Nursing Home Without Walls in the health plan in November of 2021, I believe it was, and saying that they would look at expanding Nursing Home Without Walls. And so we are in that process, and I believe this announcement is the first of others to come. But just to say that what I'll be presenting or discussing this morning is really what we learned from that pilot project. And there's a lot of learning there, and some that you will be able to benefit from as well as you move forward in your community. So I also had partners, important partners. I'm here, speaking this morning, but believe me, there's a whole team behind me, including nursing home directors, the Nursing Home Association, of course, the funders. I would not be able to talk about this in the same way if that partnership with the provincial government had not been done. As well as with the federal government, the Public Health Agency of Canada, the students that were involved in helping with the research, it all comes together as one. So I was happy that you addressed what aging in place was, because in my mind, aging in place is, yes, about staying at home, in all security, wanting to stay at home. And I know if I was to say, show your hand who is eager to go into a nursing home, there would not be many hands because we want to stay at home. But what I want to bring forward in speaking about aging in place is that it goes beyond just asking for help when we need help. It's knowing that there are resources available in the community to keep you healthy, and to bring you back to that level of autonomy, that level of health, optimal health, that you need to be at to be able to age in place. So sometimes people think, and I've had many discussions with different people around aging in place, and people will often say, oh, well, it's about accessing services when you're in need. You're absolutely, have to have someone come in, but aging in place is more than that. It's about what is available in your community to keep you active, to keep you engaged, as Aimée and Andrea discussed. It's about being able to access services, yes, but not only when you're in need, but then when you are in need, you know exactly where to go because you've interacted with these people before. That's what healthy aging in place is about. And Nursing Home Without Walls. Nursing homes and aging in place. At first, I remember talking about this and people would just, yeah, Suzanne, have to change the name. And I was convinced I did not want to change that name because nursing homes are great resources in our communities. Look at what Passamaquoddy Lodge is doing. A great resources, a great gathering of people, and people who want to help as well. And so why not leverage what we already have in our communities? Give them extra resources. Certainly, and I want this to be clear, additional resources, because I never expected that Nursing Home Without Walls would be done with no additional funding or no additional hands. That is absolutely impossible. But give them some resources. A lot of people know their community and who needs help and who was hospitalized and is coming back, and maybe extramural is no longer there and they would need an extra hand, or who doesn't go out a bit, not enough because of transportation, or we know that. We're connected as communities. That's what Nursing Home Without Walls is about. It's leveraging the knowledge of aging of nursing homes, but also their connectedness with the community. And that's what we've done. So the pilot project was done in 4 communities, a clump in the Acadian Peninsula, okay? So Lamec, Inkerman, and Packetville. And now their names have changed, but we'll keep them like that because I get all mixed up when they start talking about Terre Haute and Arcade and this and that. I'm still in the old, I'll have to change that, but anyways. So very French-speaking, rural, as you can see. And then the community of Port Elgin. And you may wonder, why those 4 communities? Those 4 communities had been in touch with me in 2018 about this concept I had discussed at a conference called Nursing Home Without Walls. At that time, no clue what that looked like, just something about nursing homes helping seniors in the community. And they were the first who came forward and said, Suzanne, we want to do this. And I said, well, okay, you may want to do this, but there's no formula about how we're going to do this. And they said, we're ready to work together and try out stuff. Try out this Nursing Home Without Walls, because we think you're onto something. We think that we can do more for our community citizens. So that's how we embarked, and when the funding was announced through the Healthy Seniors Pilot Project, these 4 nursing homes were ready. We had done community assessments, we had done meetings with the board, we had done all the groundwork, not as extensive as what was presented this morning, but very much similar, listening to the needs. What are the priorities? What should we be focusing on? And we put forward an application. So there are other nursing homes that had that consultation, but that were not quite there when the funding came. And so it ended up with these 4 communities, and it worked beautifully. So the goal, as you can guess, right, it's all about aging in place. So to ensure that older adults, their families, this was very rural New Brunswick, okay, can age in place with access to appropriate supports. And supports not only in need, but supports to remain healthy, supports to engage in the community, remain active. So not just in a needs sense, but also in a very much everyday sense of supports. 4 objectives, and that is really what we focused on, is those 4 objectives. The first one, we kept hearing that older adults did not know where to turn and where to go to get information about the services. A lot of them did not even know some services existed, and that's exactly what they needed. So we wanted to address that. The other one was around social health, addressing social isolation, addressing loneliness, a huge issue. And now as research is moving forward, we're starting to better understand the consequences of social isolation. 15 cigarettes a day is the impact of social isolation on a person. Cardiovascular health, cancer risk, name it. And as we start to understand that, we can definitely put forward the importance of addressing social health. The other one is giving knowledge, providing the information that people need to remain healthy and to remain in their homes. Falls prevention. Are there things that you should be doing in your home or yourself to remain healthy? We want to talk about that. And we do that through some fun activities, some lunch and learns, some afternoon teas. We get people in that do presentations, or we even just did a session for CPR. Many seniors had not, they know CPR, they've heard of it, but don't know how to do it. It was a great success. And the last one is empower the local community. This is not just about individuals, it's also about communities. And if there's one thing St. Andrews has, is that age-friendly community. But not every community that the project was in was an age-friendly community. And some actually had never heard of age-friendly communities, and that New Brunswick had a recognition program. And so we brought that forward and are working at, I guess, at another level with communities to make them realize that some of these communities have 36% of their citizens over the age of 65. They have to address that. When we talk about accessibility and we talk about housing and things like that, it has to be kept in mind. So how do we do this? Now, this is a lot of information. It's mostly for me, but you can try to read that. But I've divided it kind of the picture that comes forward when we talk about nursing home without walls, now that we're 4 years in, okay? So we've had time, and of course the pandemic had an impact because we're talking about nursing homes. So we got public health, permissions and things to do and not do and whatnot, and worked around it. But at first, everything pretty much halted for a bit. So one of the priorities, as I was saying, was all about navigating or accompaniment. All the questions around services and access to services. And what we got to realize is that access to services is a lot more than just providing a number. Some people tell them to call, 211, tell them to call a 1-800 number, and they can manage. And they will fill out the application, they will do what's needed, it's fine. That's not the majority. The majority of the people we have met in the project, and we're at about just over 400 participants in this project, need accompaniment. And when I say accompaniment, it's a lot more than the navigation. It's about meeting with the person, listening to them, determining the needs, determining if the services are available to fulfill that need. It can go from roofing on the house to very much healthcare to everything in between, right? And what we do with that accompaniment is that we help them apply. We do 3-way calls. We have permission from them to say, we're going to sit with you. We're going to call social development. We're going to call NB Power. We're going to call whoever. We're going to apply. And we're going to help you apply. If you need to give your T4 or because there's always something to be attached, right? It's always complicated. We will help you make that happen. And when you apply and have not heard anything in about 4 or 5 months or 3 months, we help you do the follow-up. And we have found such a difference. And we have created beautiful relationships with all kinds of organizations, including the social workers at social development. We have now, have the full collaboration, and it's just a wonderful partnership coming together. But that's the accompaniment. Then on the social health initiative, it can be from group activities, it can be friendly visits and calls. We have volunteer buddy programs that we've developed. It can be the staff that do home visits as well, or volunteers, depending on the reason, if it's very much social or if it's also a visit to assess or to try to determine the needs. Very much intergenerational activities. In some of these communities, for example, in Port Elgin, Mount Allison University's right there, well, close by. And so one of the profs has actually developed this requirement in his class where we team up students from the university with older adults in Port Elgin, and they share a lunch once a week. It has worked beautifully. And it's now in its 3rd year. And also caregiver respite. Having someone come and sit with your loved one to give caregivers a break, not necessarily to provide care, but to sit with the person, watch TV, listen to music, do a puzzle, just talk, just relax. And caregivers get a chance to either, I've heard, we rest, take a walk, do groceries, just do something for themselves. We've used the community radio, community television, all kinds of different ways to communicate. And what we have come to realize is the best way to communicate with people, especially older adults, it is through radio and newspaper. That is the number one. We had a question around that. Facebook is very popular, but not everyone is on Facebook. Definitely in social media, Facebook is on top. But very much basic, radio, newspaper, word of mouth is essential. After that, we have nursing homes that have decided that the need in their community was actually to have older adults come into their nursing home for personal hygiene. So for bathing, for foot care, for even washing their hair because they have trouble at home. We're talking as well about staying for a bit of socialization with the residents and staying for a meal, staying for lunch, and then going home with a few extra meals so that you have something during the next few days. That has also been very, very successful. And that model was implemented in Lamec. So you see the differences around the different communities responding to the needs of the citizens where they are. This is very much flexible, very much community-based, but it's all under the umbrella of Nursing Home Without Walls. And that's the beauty of it. To me, it's such a simple concept. I don't even know why we weren't doing that before. I feel like it was just sort of a brainstorming that we had, and we said, well, there's always the issue of cost. What's already available? Nursing homes are there. Let's leverage that. Let's, try to respond to the need. And again, with my community health background, I think, having that flexibility and being very much grounded in the needs of people in each community fulfills that Nursing Home Without Walls. And not everyone is doing everything that's on that slide, right? And they didn't start by doing all of that either. It was one step at a time, and it built through that. And another community, it could look very much, very different as well, with the same objectives. It all depends on what the priorities are. So in the, I call it the interactive community and nursing home, like I said, we have older adults that visit the nursing home, but we also have staff from the nursing home who visit the older adults at home. And there is also some navigation to services as well. And transportation. Some of these nursing homes have their own minibus or van, and some coordinators have trained to be able to drive the minibuses, and so they can go around and people are looking at each other, who's going to drive the bus? But just saying that, there are ways sometimes to think outside the box and to say, well, today we're focusing on one area because you can't go all around. You'll always be in the bus and never get to where you want to go. But even outings, I was in Lamec not too long ago, and one older gentleman said, I had not gone to Tim Hortons for a coffee in so long since I lost my license, and I miss it so much. And he said, guess what? The other day we went out and we stopped at Tim's and I got a coffee. I was almost crying. I could tell in his eyes and the way he was saying it, how special that was and how meaningful it was to be able to do that. And now I have chills all over. But it's the small things sometimes, right, that do make a difference. And then all the supportive services, right? From the friendly visits, the foot care, the home maintenance, be it indoors, outdoors, and the social activities, and of course the transportation, which is a big issue for many. Some it's only during the winter, sometimes it's anytime we have some kind of health condition, we can no longer drive. And so there's been transportation to groceries, to medical appointments, to social activities, sometimes through the nursing home minibus, but sometimes through volunteers or paid drivers that we have in certain communities, and sometimes neighbors who just had not realized that their neighbor needed a lift to go to a social activity or something. Okay. So at the time of preparing this slide, I just got numbers this week. We are just over 400, and these were just for the analysis. We have some people who participate in Nursing Home Without Walls that have decided to not take part in the research aspect of it. So this is only the people who have agreed to, do the surveys and do the research component of it, because it is a pilot project, and we also have reports to do as well and whatnot. So around 400. We see that about 41% are in their 70s, late 70s or early 80s is what's coming out. 63% female, women, so it's not surprising, but we're actually quite happy to see that it's still such a low number, because oftentimes, as we age, we know that women stay alive longer, age longer, and I don't want to get into that debate, but sometimes men tend to not participate. But here we've found, either through coffee chat groups or through different activities, how to go get the men, right, to take part. And so, yes, it's more than half women, but there's still a pretty good percentage there that are men. 55% with a high school degree or higher. This is in the 4 communities that we're in. 55% an income of $25,000 or more. So that's sort of the cutoff for low income and high income and whatnot. Like I was saying, for the 80s. But what's interesting is our Prisma 7 scale. So the Prisma 7 scale, for those who are not familiar with it, measures frailty. So vulnerability of people, right? And so that is part of a measure or a tool that we used. And when we look at our participants, so it's a scale of 1 to 7, Prisma 7, so 1 to 7. 3 is sort of the middle changing ground, okay? 1, 2, you're doing really good. You are at very, very low risk of frailty for that time being. At 3, you are kind of in that balance of, okay, am I going to stay, pretty stable and not frail? Or am I going to start leaning into that frailty, right? 6 and 7, we're talking nursing home residents, okay, just to give you a sense of. So our scores, as you can see, 25% are score 3 and 40% 4 or more. So we are getting the ones who I say fall between the cracks. Those who don't yet qualify sometimes for official assistance or assistance as we have it defined, because they're not sick enough, right? And they fall between the cracks until they do qualify to get more help. And these are exactly the people we wanted to catch. They are the ones. Yes, 1 and 2 for sure. They're so busy, it's hard to catch them. Yes, come on over, take part in Nursing Home Without Walls. But the 3s and over, just there, 3, 4, those are the ones who, if we catch early enough, can remain healthy enough to stay in their homes and delay a nursing home admission. And that's exactly what we've seen. We've seen a slight improvement over the 4 years, but they've at least maintained that. And they have not gotten worse. And to us, that's a big win. That means something is going right. And we're still deep in the analysis. We did a 4-time data collection. If I were to redo it, I would not do 4 because it's too much. And you can appreciate that. But it all seemed all lovely at the time. And, we were going to do this every 6 months and all this. We kind of reduced the every 6 months because it was just too much. But we are seeing some very, very interesting results and impacts. 100% of our participants said yes, satisfaction, through surveys that are administered not by us, because we don't want them to feel that they have to tell us that, oh yeah, this is wonderful. Through volunteers, through their peers, so they're free to, express themselves. 75% think they can remain in their homes another 5-10 years. That's wonderful when you have a over 75 age cohort of participants, right? So another 10 years, around the 85 mark, perfect, okay? 33.5% of our participants said that they referred to nursing home without walls instead of going to the emergency department for a non-urgent condition. They said, you know what? If you wouldn't have been here, because we were curious about that. We said, okay, what's going on here? And they said, you know what? You get so desperate when you don't know where to turn. Emerge is open 24 hours a day. We'll just sit there until they talk to us, and they'll have to tell us where to go and what to do. And I thought, oh, wow. I would never think of the emergency department as a resource like that. And also an after-hours clinic, but then you can't have an appointment because they book quickly and whatnot. So we've had calls. Yes, it is. We are very much Monday to Friday, unfortunately, so far anyways, during the day. But they do have the cell number of our coordinator. And they know only in an emergency. We've not had any abuse of it so far, over the 4 years. And we've had calls over the Christmas period saying, I'm in a crisis. I'll have to go to sit at ER because I don't know where to turn. Can you help me? And it was not something very health related. It was very much around a leak in the roof and a housing issue, but they had no clue where to go for emergency repairs and if they could get funding because they were low income. It was a crisis for them. So it's very interesting to see that having a resource in the community like that, accessible, has that impact. We've also seen some decrease in feelings of loneliness and isolation on our scale, up to 25% reduction of feelings of loneliness and social isolation. Increased knowledge on how to remain healthy. We have, like I said, talked about falls prevention to arthritis pain, to all kinds. We listen to what's needed, lots of mental health issues as well, trying to demystify asking for help as well. The services are definitely helping with aging in place. And I was interested when you said an increased feeling of security. Because I know from my research over the past 15, 20 years on aging in place, that feeling of security is so hard to describe, but is so important. And so we added that scale or question in some of our surveys, and we have seen a tremendous increase in that feeling of security in the community because they know where to turn, they feel connected to the community. And that speaks a lot from what we've seen before. And it's addressing the gaps. That's exactly what it is, that falling in the cracks, like I was saying. So as a conclusion, because I am the one keeping you from lunch, I think, and I'm not sure how I'm doing on time.
Oh, no, you're fine.
I'm good?
You're fine.
All right. Well, we can have questions then or comments. So I like this quote that one of our participants said around nursing home without walls sees the possibilities when us seniors see the barriers. So when you think you can no longer remain at home or you really don't know what you're going to do because you're facing a situation, they told us Nursing Home Without Walls actually sees the possibilities that I don't even know exist. And so we've kept that. It was so nice. I had one of the coordinators said, as soon as I got to the office, I wrote that down because it represents so much of what is being done with Nursing Home Without Walls. And so it's a very innovative, it's an economical model, really, because we're not creating a new infrastructure. Where we're funding, and I'm saying we're, Minister Bockus and her team are funding. I'm so a part of this now. We're funding resources. We're funding staff. When I look at our budget for the pilot project and for the 4 communities, people will say, oh yeah, university project. I say, nope, not at all. I applied for that funding as part of a team. Each nursing home provided me with what they needed to hire the staff they needed for the model that they envisioned. And the cost of running that project And I transferred that money to them. It is their project. It is not my project as a researcher and as a nurse and as someone who's very invested in aging in our province. It's their project. This is very much under their control. And what I kept is the portion of research, right, that I'm sharing with them as well. But it is very, very much community-based, and it has to be. So economical, because we're funding the staff, we're funding some of the activities and whatnot, but way better than having someone sit in the emergency or not able to stay at home and being admitted too early to a long-term care facility. 1 in 9 older adult is admitted too early to long-term care. 1 in 9. Think about that. Because the services were not available in the community. So we can address that. Definitely. I'm convinced we can address that. It's flexible. It's very much community-based, community participation, whatnot, based on needs of communities. It embraces age-friendly communities, which is already in progress in our province, so why not build on that? And we're seeing the satisfaction and the positive impact of the project. It is not perfect, right? But I have to say, the issues we've had, we've worked out pretty well. Even to the point where when we did our last data collection, and I had some master's students do some interviews with the participants, but also the nursing home staff and the administrator. And they came back after a while and they said, Suzanne, I think we're asking the wrong questions. Everyone's satisfied. We've never seen that. Because they've been involved in research with me for the past 3 years in different projects. And people see an interview to, okay, let's get this out, right? This is the time to tell them what's not going right? And they came back and they said, I don't know, they're all very satisfied, and some have suggested little improvements, but it's nothing. And I thought, wow, this is really something. Because again, it's community-based. It's not about me prescribing something. It's not about the nursing homes prescribing something. It's about someone leading it, but also listening to what is happening on the ground and trying to address that. The future of a nursing home without walls, I'm so thrilled to see where this is at. Never in my wildest dreams in 2019, when I applied for that funding, did I imagine that we would be here. But it's because of the impact it's had. It's not about me, it's about the team members that are, implementing this, and the participants that we've been able to help. 95% of our participants, of those 400, 95% have been able to remain at home in the last 4 years. We've had a very minimum number that had to transition, and they were the older ones. And when we look at their chronic conditions, they had more chronic conditions. And of course, nursing homes are not going away. We're going to need them, right? But if we can delay it for 6 months, a year, with good quality of life, of course, right? There's always some criteria there. It's not at all cost, right? It has to be done in the right way. We can have an impact. So we are expanding in New Brunswick with the leadership of social development. It's now become a program and not a project, so I piloted the project. So I was able to pilot the project, and now we are in the transformation of getting it to a program for about the last year or so, working with a great team at Social Development through the Aging Secretariat, and just amazed of the work that's being done. And I'm saying that in all sincerity and not because you're sitting there. No, but I really want to, it is so important to have a listening ear, but also someone who, I get it, government, social development, there are ways of doing things in a really neat box. And we want to control everything, and we want to check mark everything. This is not about that at all. So when they said, okay, we're going to start working together, and I thought, oh, I know where this is going to go. And even told a few colleagues, I said, well, I'm going in with an open mind, but I've been so lucky to be surrounded by people who really get that community approach and who knew that the success of Nursing Home Without Walls was not about ticking boxes. It was about trusting the communities and being flexible, although we always try to, that flexibility is a challenge, right? Because we want to be able to control and we have to evaluate and we have to do this. But if we make it too rigid, it's not going to work, right? So it has to be flexible. So there's expansion happening and more to come, I'm told. And other provinces who are looking at New Brunswick and saying, what's this Nursing Home Without Walls business? What's that about? And I've had conversations with many, many provinces, be it from Nova Scotia to BC, with Manitoba and Ontario and whatnot, especially around their rural concerns about how to keep older adults in the rural communities and access to services. And this really speaks to them. Like we have nursing homes in our rural communities. Okay, tell us about how you've done this. And some great, great interest and some wonderful conversations happening at that level, along with a partner, Healthcare Excellence Canada, who's arm lengths to Health Canada. So exciting things I can tell you are happening, and I invite you to embrace it and to embrace what it can bring and what it will look like in your community. And that's the important part, I want to say. I presented what it looked like in the pilot, in the 4 communities, because that was the need. I could be here in 2 years and talk about what else we've learned and what else it's looking like, right? Because of that flexibility. Some team members I just wanted to acknowledge, and that was at a fair that we were at, or a meeting in Fredericton, and a lovely sunflower that I took a picture of to thank you for your attention and your interest. Thank you. And most importantly, I did not have a coughing spell. I was at my table earlier and I said, oh, because I had a coughing spell. I said, oh, great, this is going to happen now. I'd be interested, if we have time, if you have questions, comments. Is this really speaking to you?
One simple thing we noticed was we had 40% in the 70s and 30% in the 80s. That means there's another 30% what, in the 90s?
Some 90s, but they're mostly the earlier generations of older adults in their 60s that are coming to the social activities, and that are those are the ones who also volunteer in the program as well. They do some buddy visits and whatnot, but we do have some that are over 95. Yeah, so they're spread out on both ends, honestly. Yeah.
My other comment's wonderful model, and I'm really glad to hear that you have a more grounded partnership with box pickers.
Yeah.
With all due respect, that's something that we heard in the other setting in university.
Oh yeah.
That's always a challenge. So it's wonderful that you have that kind of partnership where the
I agree.
For things is always a little more fun.
I agree. And I do not take it for granted that we are not checking boxes, right? I am so grateful, but I so appreciate that the people involved in expanding this realize that I think that's the secret to having this work. It can have been called whatever, we could have done whatever. If this was about ticking boxes because we could only offer certain things, it wouldn't have worked. What about that person who calls us all of a sudden and has some kind of need because, we get all kinds of things, and you learn to deal with what you can do and not do, but that's why you refer to your partners in the community, right? Your partners at the community health clinic. In some communities, we have a nurse practitioner, there's extramural, there's social development, there's health, there's NB Power that does things for low-income seniors that no one even knew about, They don't advertise it. They should, but they don't, unfortunately. It could be with the Alzheimer's Society. It could be all kinds of things. But we get all kinds of calls from even neighbors who say, oh, I think my neighbor was in the hospital and they need help, but they didn't qualify for extramural because it's not a medical need. But I think they could, benefit from a visit or something. And, you get in there and you realize they have to put these compressed stockings on every morning. They cannot, they struggle with it. The husband can't handle it, or vice versa. We had one man who needed some kind of compression suit that went to under his arms. And the wife said, I can only get to the knees with that compression suit, and he needs this for 2 weeks. Can you come and help? Yes, we can. We will help you. Where else do you turn? Right? Like, what do you do? And it's situations like that you can't plan. You can't have a checkbox that says compression suit help or whatever, Like, it's the things like that sometimes that you think, wow, like, where would they have turned, right?
Suzanne and I know each other from other things that have gone on, but I do want to pass this on to everybody, and I've had the opportunity to speak to this at the national level, what Suzanne has done, is that here is a New Brunswicker who really has had a tremendous influence across the country. I've had the privilege of participating in some of her webinars and things that she's done, and this woman has basically done an incredible job, and it shows everybody across the country, and being a Toronto boy who's come back home, they still can't believe how come these people from New Brunswick.
What's going on in New Brunswick? Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I gave a webinar for the International Federation of Aging, which was at 7 a.m. our time, and was international, right? And it was around aging in place and what we're doing here in New Brunswick. Talked about age-friendly communities, but also I had been invited to speak about Nursing Home Without Walls. And it was so interesting. You made me think of this. It was so interesting during the question period of having someone from Italy and someone from Australia ask questions that are the questions that we have around the needs of older adults. And these people could have been my neighbors, in Moncton. It was just, it's so a universal need around aging in place. And we can definitely almost do a list, right? From the social connectedness and being engaged in the community to the physical and social needs and psychological needs and name it, right? So you made me think of that. Comments? Yes, ma'am.
I just love how it takes the whole notion of any kind of residential setting and turns it on its head into more of a building supportive communities that connect all of us, not just the people in need, but the people who have an opportunity to contribute to a more inclusive, embracing, and supportive community. It's not about a home except your own home.
Exactly. And the interaction that happens, be it intergenerational, but also, and you made me think of this, in the nursing homes that have older adults from the community come in for baiting or whatnot, that socialization that happens afterwards, they're seeing neighbors and people from their community they haven't visited, because some people don't like going into a nursing home to visit the ones who have deteriorated. Oh, I have trouble saying that in English. And it's kind of like, oh, is that me in a few years? Or there's not a lot of, in some communities, right? I cannot generalize that. But on a spontaneous comment we received from nursing home staff where some of our some of our older adults from the community actually got admitted to a nursing home. They said they had never seen a transition like that before. The person knew where things were. They knew the staff that they had interacted with for their bath and for their hair washing and the social activities. They knew the recreational director. They knew a lot of the residents as well. And we didn't even ask that. We were at a team meeting, and a staff said, you know what I noticed? And I thought, oh, okay, yeah. So, and she says, when they're coming in, if they have to be admitted to nursing home, it's a completely different experience. And I said, oh, tell me more about that. Because we weren't we're not measuring for that. Our focus was so much aging in place, and when you start off, you don't think of that. But that's definitely an additional benefit of saying, okay, so if there's that interaction, right, with Passamaquoddy Lodge or whoever, whatever nursing home, already the barriers are coming down. It's very much normalizing long-term care, right? And long-term care that should not only be in institutions, but also very much community-based. Let's stop, putting the silos, and let's look at long-term care as a full-fledged continuum. Health is included in there. Palliative care should be there. End of life care. We should be looking at it on a full continuum. From health promotion to prevention to right down to your last few breaths, right? Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment. When I first went into the department.
Oh, come on. Yes, certainly. I was just going to say that, but I didn't want to interrupt.
When I first went into the department, I said, my mandate is that everyone, all seniors in the province, should be able to live with dignity and in comfort. And I want to congratulate you for starting this program.
Thank you.
Because in the next little while, I'll be making 13 more announcements for Nursing Home Without Walls.
You said it.
In different communities. So I wanted, this is my hometown sort of thing.
I couldn't say that.
Yeah. But I will be making additional announcements. So it has grown, communities have bought into this, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful program. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I was so happy when we reintroduced the role of Minister of Seniors, because it was there, we lost it, and when it came back, I thought, oh, the news is going to be over this, right? Because we're an aging population, and not a word. And I remember having a conversation with Radio-Canada for something else, and I said, did you notice, we've gained a Minister of Seniors? And I was so excited, and they said, oh, yeah. I said, no, it's very important. This is our voice. This is our defender of our province who's aging, and it's so important. But yeah, thank you so much. And this is very much, like I said, it is a team effort, very much so. We cannot have success in something without all the hands being in, from the older adults and their families telling us what they need, to right up to policy and to government. It's truly, it's really something. Yeah, I'm enjoying every minute of it. Thank you. Thank you. Are we good?
We are great.
We are good?
Oh,
Okay.
merci, Suzanne. Oh,
You're
c'était
welcome.
magnifique. Are there any more questions? We're just about to eat. Yes.
I was really pleased that you were talking about some things that aren't health or social, that people sometimes have to leave their properties because they can't mend the roof, as you mentioned, and so on. And if that could be part of our resource center here, so if something happens, and they do happen, we've got big storms and things going in, if we had a resource center where people would feel comfortable and to bring those people into their homes to do the stuff that needs to be done. Not everyone, as you say, is on Facebook and so on. And maybe people new to our community don't have the network to say, I really need to have the person who takes those branches away or whatever. Yep. So I was delighted to see that that's part of the puzzle to keep people at home.
It definitely is, and it's a huge piece of the puzzle. From the research that we've done and other teams have done wherever aging in place has been studied, it's not about the medical needs that people don't stay at home for. It's all the rest. It's from that simple, storm and everything. And it's that extra thing at one point. It's the drop that, I don't know how you
Straw
say
that breaks
Thank
the
you.
camel's back.
In English, I can never say that. C'est la goutte qui fait déborder le verre, all right?
Right? The drop of water that overflows the jar.
But it's those things, and they accumulate, right? They slowly accumulate. Oh, I can't do this. Okay, I'll let it go. Oh, geez, here's something else I can't do. Whew, okay, well, yeah, that's okay. And here's another thing I can no longer maybe do or deal with, or, oh, it's coming. You feel the heaviness. And at one point, you just say, I can't do this anymore. I can no longer stay in my home because you do not have the resources. And what has happened in some communities, we can endorse, company A to say, oh, they will do your work, 100% or whatnot. But we can have a discussion with company A and say, would you be interested? We are doing a list, or we can recommend you. But we always tell the people who call or who ask us, it's your responsibility to, make sure that this is the right contractor for you. And because we don't want to be responsible if a job doesn't get done properly or anything like that. But we do provide, because we've developed with time, we've developed those relationships of saying, okay, well, now we have a roofer that we can contact and that we know he's done or they've done jobs for other seniors, and it's worked out quite well. And they are affiliated with the emergency housing program or repair program, and they already have those forms filled out and all this complication that happens in the background. That can be done. And exactly, you have a storm and there's something to be cleaned up, or there's a resource there available. Yeah. And I think that if we have to.
Why don't we, first of all, help ourselves to some food, and then we can continue to question and
I'm staying,
answer.
so.
Is that okay, Bart? Are you?
Yeah, my question, I think, might be of interest to the group.
One last one.
Okay. The similarity between what we're doing here and nursing homes without walls is clear, right? But I'm wondering if there is room for or any thought about a more formal connection, or
Definitely.
Like nursing home without walls is a really great example of kind of what we're striving for. But what would it take to make a more formal connection?
You're already in. The funding came through Nursing Home Without Walls, and
I knew I was missing a link.
Sorry, maybe we didn't make that clear enough, maybe. But know that there will be behind-the-scenes support to make sure that the people involved at Passamaquoddy Lodge, Emma, I believe her name was, yes, who will be the coordinator and whatnot, there's support there from the social development team, from the Healthcare Excellence Canada team, from myself. There will be coaches available. So it's a whole setup. I am so impressed, I'm telling you. And I'm not saying that lightly. You're part of the family. And your nursing home without walls is going to look like it should for St. Andrews.